Wow.
Please. You'll give it to the CFO next to Robbie. Dr. Miller was talking. That's right. Dr. Miller.
Chief, take a good look at Robbie. All righty, thank you very much. That means everything to us. We really appreciate your support. We're going to change the agenda just a little bit and bring up the tax abatement subject first because we have the city manager here to help us if there are any questions in that process.
You're moving up discussion item.
Yeah, discussion. Turn this over to Dr. Wallace here at the beginning. I'm sure about it, and go over to the board for questions.
So for the board, we are moving 7.3, consideration of tax abatement for 35 and Liberty DBA Tractor Bob's up in the agenda. With us this evening is Mr. Ball. Robbie will go kind of through the materials with you that are included in your packet. And then, as Mr. Haynes said, we do have our city manager, Barry Sullivan, with us to answer questions that might be related. So.
Anybody on the board? Okay, it is my understanding the city has already approved their version of the abatement. Okay. Right. It might be at the pleasure of the board to consider this we can do this, we can table it, we can do a 7-year, we can do a 10-year. So there should be some discussion or questions about how we might approach that.
So we don't know whether or not GISD or others have abated yet. Okay. Denied. Okay, gotcha.
Okay. Go ahead.
It meets all the others. This time is on.
So according to their projections, we meet the requirements. Okay. So, any thoughts from the board on 7-year, 10-year table? I agree.
In my experience, it's customary for other taxing entities to participate at a varying rate, depending on their policies. typically just not more than the lead entity.
Right.
Mr. Chair, if there are flaws in the actual reinvestment zone number, the actual document, what you could instruct us to do is to move forward with presenting you a corrected version with the approval intended for 7 years, and then do your final approval upon that correction if you so desired to.
I would be considerably more comfortable if I had accurate documents in front of me, and I would agree with the 7-year. But that is at the pleasure of the board. I'd need a motion to be able to move forward with that. So I'd need a motion to say that we will be happy to vote on this when we have documents presented to us that include what we're talking about right now.
I would make a motion that we would review all documents once they comport with our policies.
I have a motion, second? Second. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Robbie. Thanks, Barry. Have fun at the hospital board. All right, that would put us back on to our schedule as we began the agenda. So, see if I can get to it. Okay. Let's, no more citizens, Sandy?
No, sir.
Okay. Then we have special presentation from Dr. Wallace.
Yes, several things. You know, you often as a board get to hear all of my involvement with state things because of the nature of my position and what I'm able to do, but I think it's also important that we highlight some of the other involvement, and I'm very proud to say that Melinda Carroll, you have to stand, Melinda, I'm sorry. Melinda Carroll is our Vice Chancellor of Enrollment Management, but Melinda has just been elevated to and appointed and elected to presidency of TACRO. And now TACRO is not just community colleges. That is universities, public and private, and community colleges association for registrars and enrollment. And yes, you can sit down, fine. But that's quite an accolade, and we want to applaud her at her new role as that. Try to start doing several of these each month in order to show the involvement we have. Debbie Huffman, if you would stand. Debbie is an active member of the TACTI Board of Directors, which is the technical educators for the state of Texas, and they're a very active group and focus on CTE across all the 50 districts, so we congratulate Debbie on her continued service there. Jennifer Beal, if you've ever applied for anything, you can blame Jennifer. I'm just teasing. Jennifer Beal is our Director of Enrollment and Advising, and Jennifer is is actually co-chair, I believe, now for the Applied Texas Advisory Committee for the Coordinating Board. That is what we fill out to go to college in the state of Texas. And so we're telling Jennifer all the things we wish was on Applied Texas. And she's taking it forward, but would you congratulate her on her appointment? Blend some others together while I have some opportunity. I would remind you that volleyball placed second in conference. Ladies volleyball did. That was the most stressful game I've ever attended in my life. And they did such a great job. And we hosted this year the regional tournament, which was a nice change. We've not been hosting very often. Had a lot of compliments on our gymnasium and the work we've done there. And Jack, to your team, they were very impressed by our facilities. And our athletic director, Van Hedrick, they were very complimentary. So if you would congratulate volleyball. So with us are two different groups this evening that I have to recognize. I would first like to just start by naming some individual stock horse champions. It's pretty awesome. 13 collegiate teams competed, making it the largest collegiate show they've had in several years. And Tana Butts got all-around go 1, second overall, all-around go 2, first overall, and show overall champion. If she would stand, please, in the back there. They're way back in the back. Sabrina Smith, and this was the novice division. Sabrina took on all-around go 1, 8th overall, and I don't know if she's with us tonight. Okay, that's okay. Limited non-pro division, Maddie Harris, all-around go 1, 17th overall, and reigning champion for both shows. Is she with us? Okay, it's okay. Alyssa Greek, all-around go 1, 18th overall, all-around go 2, 15th overall, and show overall 16th. And she's not with us. We're going to name them all. Non-pro division, Meade. Are you with us? Meade is here. I saw Meade. Okay. All-around go 1, 5th overall, and Cal Work champion first go. And so give Meade her. I think Owen was here. Is Owen here? Or did he? Okay, no problem. All-around go 1, 12th overall. Overall go 2nd, or number 2 with 9th overall, and show overall 11th. So give Owen a round of applause. Riley, all-around go 1, 14th overall. Riley's with us, so congratulations to her as well. Now, here's the exciting. Coach Gilmore, you need to stand too and let us thank you for your work of our coach. All the team gets to stand up. Second place on go 1 and 4th overall for the entire show. And so good job, team. What's also exciting is cross-country women's team. We got to send them to nationals. And so that is, you all have to stand. Women's team, stand. Come on, stand up. You're all looking good. So, you're not even heard the best part. We placed 10th nationally. And so that is unheard of for a team that is no older than they are as far as how long we've had cross country. So congratulations, ladies, on your 10th world. Thank you. And Doug Lash, we're going to embarrass you individually if you would stand, because he qualified as an individual for the Nationals. And Doug Lash, we appreciate your work representing the college as well. And Coach Longren, if you would stand, Coach, stand up, because they have to give you a big round of applause. You've taken us. We're going to expect 9th next year and then 8th, because you keep moving them up. So we thank you for your work. So important for us to recognize our athletes and the roles that they play, and our staff. But one of the things I pride ourselves about our athletic program, and Mr. Hedrick, shout out to you in this, we have great GPAs. Our students are scholars. Our students are committed to the college. Our students represent us across the state and the nation and the region and everywhere they go with respect, and they're a great team. They are working in this community. Recently, I mean, it's just as soon as last week, they were loading boxes for missionary boxes for local churches. They serve dinners to people. They read books to elementary school students. They're doing more than just what they do on their field or respective court or when they're running, and we appreciate that about them, and they are important. You'll hear us talk about more expansion to athletics as we talk about housing concerns, but we appreciate their work and all they do, and shout out to you, Van, and your work and all you do for the college. So thank you all. So, yes, sir, you have something to say? I don't know if I want to give you a mic. Yeah, we appreciate that. Some of you, I'm curious, first time, and I mean, they had to go to Florida of all things. Wasn't that painful? But first time to go to Florida. Raise your hand. First time to be like beach, out of town kind of stuff. Were your first kind of adventure? Okay. That's pretty cool too, because you get to see a lot. And then our rodeo team gets to travel a lot. You all get to go a lot of places. I think you've even had to go to Pedernales and some of the areas and some of those things. So we appreciate their work. That's all I have under the special presentation.
Well, Dr. Wallace, if you would like to continue on to the
Yes, I will.
Chancellor's report.
Yes, and we will allow any of you athletes and special folks, if you want to leave, you will not offend us greatly, just partially. I love this part. I love to recognize our athletes, our students in general. So we've had several things going on the last few weeks since our last board meeting. One of the things that I think I would be negligent not to mention is the success that our foundation always has between our 2 donor scholar breakfasts and our donor scholar lunch. The lunch took place in Graham. It was well received. It was a beautiful event. We always love to see students that are success stories. We got to hear from one of our students that was a nurse with us and now is a practicing managing nurse and went through all the programs she did, and she's still in her community working. There wasn't a dry eye in the place at the donor scholar breakfast because of the stories associated with that and the success and some of the best speakers we've had in a long time. I think several of you were able to make that, and it was just really meaningful. And so to Debbie and to the foundation staff, all of those that put that together, and really most importantly to those students, we appreciate so much to our scholars and our donors. I remind the board that this is an election year coming up for the board. We have 2 places that will be open. And I just want to give you a couple of updates there. That election, first day to file for place on the ballot for one of those 2 is January 18th of 2023, which is hard to say. And then the last day to file for a place on the ballot as a regular candidate would be February 17th. So January 18 through February 17. Packets are going to be made available online, as well as an individual can still pick those up in the office of the chancellor. Would be the easiest. You are going to be voting later on their consent agenda. If you have any questions, we can answer them. But appointing a designee as filing authority and election administrator, that is Sandy. So those office, that would be with her if you wanted to pick that up, if you approve that agenda item. But we just want to let that be known that January 18th. I'm really excited that we're doing our very best to partner with all the other entities and how we go about doing our election. Sandy had a luncheon last week with all the ISD voting officials, the hospital, the county, the city, just to bring everybody together and say, how can we share, times when we can. Early voting, can we share resources and judges? And so it's been exciting to see us working together with that. And so that's coming up, and just wanted you to be aware of that. No big news on the front of the Texas Commission on Community College Finance. On the contrary, our work there with that team is basically done, so we'll enter the session now in January, beginning to work and see what that does play out legislatively. And then the final update I have for you in the report this evening is that we will be attending, several of us leaving for Atlanta over the weekend for the Southern Association of Community Colleges and Schools annual conference. I just have to say once again, we are in a very good place with accreditation that we are entering that. This is the official meeting where they announce that we have no warnings, no comprehensive violations, that we are free for 10 years. And they put it on a board for 10 seconds, and it's like we worked harder than that 10 seconds. Our staff worked so hard, but this will be the official notice of that. And so I applaud our staff and faculty again for getting us through a very arduous accreditation process, and we have absolutely no recommendations. That's unheard of, and so congratulations to everyone that did that.
Thank you, Dr. Wallace. We are now looking at the consent agenda on the consent agenda. I need a motion, unless there are questions about anything on the consent agenda. I need a motion to accept. Second?
I'll second.
Second. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Acknowledge aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda is accepted as presented. Brings us to informative reports. Chair Metzler is not here. There was not a meeting due to Thanksgiving, so we have no report. Finance Committee.
Did not meet.
Okay, and Building Committee.
We met, we had an IT update. Thank you, Denise, for doing that for us today. We also discussed the Medal of Honor Museum, which we will be voting on here shortly. And then we also discussed ad nauseum funding for the residential housing and on the Gainesville campus. And I think we discussed that enough that we've said, hey, we probably need a little more time to figure out what we want to propose to do. So I think this one's going to be the vote on this will be tabled at least until we figure out what all we do. So I think there's some questions as far as what is our need? Do we need 1 or 2 dorms, and how would we populate it? How would we pay for, what are we gonna charge? How are we gonna pay for it? Some of the funding and those things, I think, are things that we want a little bit more, have a little more discussion on.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As always, we have the last month's financial statements before you for this time for October of 2022. I think I would be remiss if I didn't call your attention to a couple of glaring issues on the second page, which should be the page titled Budget Comparison. A little background here. I believe your copies may have a couple of numbers highlighted in yellow. We are in audit season right now. Our final stages are being put on the audit for presentation in a couple of weeks. And every year we have this issue. When we end one fiscal year, we have a lot of, I don't want to bore you with all the accounting terminology, but we have a lot of deferred revenues. Anything we collect in June, July, and August for the next school year has to be carried over on the books to the next year. And so at some point, once the old year is closed, the new year, financial year opened up, we have to bring those deferred revenues over and convert them to current revenues. Last year, we did that in October. So the numbers you see off to the right for prior year, that has all of the fall tuition is there, and all of the fall room and board is there under auxiliary enterprises. This year, because of some delays that we had, that transaction did not happen until the first week of November. So we show negative local funds through the end of October. That's because we have not yet brought any of our tuition and fee revenue for fall over to the books. That was done 3 weeks ago. So that is now there, but a timing issue with the report. So on that particular page, expenses at the bottom of the page are going to be very accurate, but please don't have any heartburn over the numbers at the top of the page. We are in good shape. And I think the good shape will be borne out by the cash flow report, which shows our cash available at the end of October for this year is actually slightly higher than it was at the same time last year. So that, I hope, gives you more reassurances that finances are at this moment in good shape. Are there any other questions that you may have about anything else that you found in those reports?
Thank you, Dr. Miller.
All right, thank you.
All righty, OER report, Professor Ince and Professor Bell.
I just wanted to start off our presentation today with saying thank you to each of you for allowing us the opportunity to speak with you a little bit about our work on OER over the past couple of years. I know my process took about 2 years, working with being awarded a grant and working with the grant team and career services and the marketing team to develop my technical writing course that all the faculty at NCTC are now able to use, and to develop this using OER materials and create a no-cost textbook solution for our students. And I just wanted to say that the stipends that we have been awarded to throughout this process have been immeasurably helpful, and to say thank you for your support. I'm going to let Tamar talk for just a few minutes about the benefits of OER and kind of her process.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us here tonight. We're really excited to share. I know this was part of the report that was given to Dr. Wallace earlier in the semester and this year. And we just wanted to give you all like a practical perspective of what this looks like from the faculty of implementing OER in a classroom and what that looks like. And my process was a little shorter than Jared's because he went through the grant process. I was also awarded a stipend through the school, which I'm grateful for because that stipend allowed me time to really focus on the implementation over the second summer session. So instead of teaching a course, I was able to just completely focus on the OER implementation process. And that was important because we're giving up publisher resources that we often are, readily available to us, but a very important work. I know OER was personally important to me in a zero textbook choice for my public speaking interpersonal course in the speech department because as a first generation in college student myself, when I got to community college, I also had a lot of difficulty and challenges paying for my textbook. It's like paying for classes is one thing and then you have this other hurdle to figure out. So I know it was important to me to pass on that equitable opportunity to all my students, leaving no stone unturned to give them a chance to succeed. And one of the good things when we presented this to the cabinet, Ms. Debbie Sharp had shared that one of the most common emergency funds is actually textbook requests. And unfortunately, by the time students get that request in, it's about 3 weeks into the semester, and that puts them at odds in succeeding in a course. And we don't want that as instructors, as a school. So that was helpful to know. And the great thing about a zero textbook cost to the student is that they have access to the textbook on day one, and it's completely integrated in Canvas. There's no access code, there's no login, there's no technical issues that the instructors have to deal with that could be so onerous and take all of our time, and honestly is a barrier to learning. I know personally when I have those issues, I was like, I want to throw in the towel, but I need to persevere, so we want to make sure that we note that. And it takes me about 5 minutes every semester when I'm course planning to download the OER on the publisher website or the OER website and upgrade it into our Canvas page. And I know the integration is huge for students. It's right there, easy to find. Another thing that's really helpful to note is most OERs and the ones we use in our speech department have a print option to students. So they are zero textbook costs to the students, but I know often as an instructor and faculty, I get the question, is there an option to print this? Because I learn better writing in the margin notes and just appropriating the information to myself. And they do have that option. For $20, they can get the textbook mailed to the house. And if they don't want to pay the $20, it's free to them. They have that option. They got options, and that's what we want our students to have, options. And I think that the most helpful thing from an instructor perspective is that we do not need to compromise quality. I know that was part of the board report also, and there's no reason that faculty ever need to compromise quality to embed an open education resource, a zero textbook cost solution to the student. Just like going through any publisher-supported textbook, I went through the same process as faculty with the support of my division chair, just helping filter through the textbook. And there were options that weren't great that I didn't go with. And it was a year-long process where I was like, this isn't the right one. We want to make sure our students have no compromise on the quality. So I think that's a misconception in terms of a faculty perspective, but there's no reason that we have to give up quality to give us students a zero textbook cost option. And that's I think is great. And then the good thing is that the professional development that is in this process, I think helps us as faculty members know that maybe we don't have publisher supported resources anymore, but we do have a lot of resources available to us. The OER textbook repository is a big one. The state of Texas has put in a lot of funding to supporting instructors in this process. I know over the summer I did the THECB Creator Academies, which taught me about licensing in OERs, how they work, how they're so different than regular textbooks. And these are important things for us as faculty to learn. So I think just growing in that process and sharing that information with other instructors. I think I've shared it with every instructor I've talked to this semester. So I'm sorry in advance to the instructors, especially at the Flower Mound campus. They've heard a lot of OER material from me. But I think it's the best option for students. So I'm going to pass it back to Jared, who's going to finish this up.
One other thing we might talk about is in technical writing, just the 310 students that we piloted this particular version of the technical writing course with. Since 2020, we've saved students on textbooks approximately $24,000 throughout the past couple of years, which I was incredibly proud of. I thought that was a really special thing, and then I saw Tamar's numbers, and I was kind of embarrassed. The speech courses, all speech courses are OER supported now, and they've had, since 2019, they've had almost 4,000 students go through those courses, and they've saved those students about $600,000 on textbook costs. These are costs that are deferred for other things, and I think, speaking to what Tamara was saying about creating more equitable courses for our students, sometimes it helps to see the numbers of that and actually see how the work that we're doing is actually directly impacting students. And so I kind of wanted to end with this idea that we do talk about OER being free all the time as a free for students, but the thing we have to keep in mind is that cost is being transferred to faculty and to the schools that are supporting it. And so through grant funding and specifically through the stipends that NCTC has, I know, awarded us, that's, I think, an incredibly valuable way to secure this kind of work for our students in the future. And so we wanted to say thank you to the board and to the administration for supporting this work that we've been doing. Happy to answer questions if you have them, but thank you very much.
First, thank you. Remarkable.
Mr. Chair, if you remember, and members of the board, a couple of years ago, we started this conversation from the Board of Regents through your training with the Board of Trustees Institute in the state, this notion of the increasing price associated with the non-classroom, the support materials, the lab materials, the course content. We introduced to you all a couple of years now with the 01, 02 English courses, 1301 and 02, a common written. This is another example. OER, by the way, for non-education speak people, is open educational resource. Because some of you in the audience may not know that terminology, but basically these folks have written material and been willing to publish it and make it their own at the same as in students, when they could have written their own textbooks. Both of you could have written a textbook and made money yourselves. And I think that's the important aspect of this, is giving back to the students. And now we have a resource that combined saves students $625,000, when honestly the college probably invested about $5 for them to be able to do it. That's meaningful, we believe. And so but this fulfills a board priority you've had for several years.
Can we talk about how we can expand the program?
How does it go? Okay, I can answer that. So the open education resource, the OER that's zero cost to students, is available on Canvas. They're also provided a link where the OER is housed, specifically Libre text, L-I-B-R-E text is where these OERs are housed. It's just one of the companies that house them on their website. On and through the website is where students have the additional option to order a print copy directly to their house for $20, which would probably cost less than printing them out at home themselves. So they're directly offered the free online version through the Canvas course, and then the print option through the website where the OER is housed. Is the, I'm sorry?
I would argue yes. Most of our students are very technically, through Chromebook, through
Yes.
iPad, they're using the online.
Yeah, it's just nice to have that option to say, yes, it's available in case they learn better that way. But overwhelmingly, yes, they do use the electronic version.
Looking at the remarkable success that two of you have had on this, how might we go about expanding this program?
So we continue to offer that. So for example, with Jared's work, Professor Ince has been working with technical writing, but I don't, that's one piece further in the English department, for example. But we do have others working on OER work as well. And so you'll hear those as they're finalized, as they're completed. Where the board supports this work is through the continued support of giving reduction, course reduction, giving the stipend that we've been in, supporting that through a budgetary process to say, Dr. Wallace, keep doing those things. Dr. King, keep allowing faculty to take the time to offer those. That's how you show that. But we are going to come back with more of these. Where you find it a struggle is in the sciences and the mathematics. It is so difficult to have open resource materials in certain disciplines where in an A&P book, for example, anatomy and physiology book could be $300 and $400 for that book. There's just not a lot out there yet, but we're even working there. How do we make that better? And as to Professor Bell's comment, the state's finally catching on to the necessary piece of this. The coordinating board is starting to undergird that. So I think we're going to see more money for funding these initiatives from even the state level. Did you have? You
Understated. I remember paying in college sometimes, and I went a long time ago, so I can only imagine what they do now. But for a spiral-bound book like this, sometimes $70 or $90 or $120. And I think what y'all are doing is commendable. And as we talk about student experience, I think this is a great way y'all are really helping our students and making sure that they have a great experience. So thank you both.
Even though I had to deal with Mr. Gutenberg and I finally got my textbook printed, I am truly grateful for what you're doing. It's part of our mandate to provide affordable quality education. Thank you for what you did. Alrighty. We would like to now entertain the QEP report from Amy Clone, Shannon Solomon, and Bree Jones.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having us and allowing us the opportunity to share with you. We would like to give an update on the annual report of the Quality Enhancement Plan, known as Aspire to be Hired. Last year around this time, you heard that the program was approved as a part of the SAC-COC visit, and so we are happy to share with you our first year annual report, so you should all have that report with you. And that really focuses on the three aspects in our programming and student learning outcomes, focusing on embedding employability skills into the classroom and really enhancing what was there and really making the students more aware and an impact on the connection between the employability skill, the professionalism that they're learning in their course, and how that can be applied, and just able to articulate that as an employee when they're ready to graduate and leave NCTC. So just a couple of highlights, and then I'm going to turn it over to the rest of our team. But we have exciting news. The program was recently nominated and qualified as a top 10 finalist for the Bellwether Award in the area of instruction and programming services. So we're very excited for that. We submitted that, and we're honestly very surprised that we got that just because of the newness of the program. But we're very excited to show that that will be showcased at their annual conference in February, and so we will be competing for that award. And we're excited to just show the program and how it can work and the scalability and sustainability for even other institutions across the country to make a replicable program. And then just another highlight in the report you have, again, this we looked at our three major aspects from the program learning outcomes, our program outcomes, and then student learning outcomes. And those all focus, again, around awareness of the employability skill, articulation, so an opportunity to describe and discuss that, and then opportunities for application. And just one highlight I want to say is the feedback that we got from the students in the course. So actually in the course doing their assignment, and you'll hear more about this from a student in a moment, but 84% of those students scored a 2.9 really out of a 3-point scale in that articulation of that skill, really showing us that they see what they're learning in their class when they're talking about communication and professionalism and ethical decision making and problem solving. They're seeing how they can utilize that in their industry, and they're seeing that connection. And so we're really excited for that data point, and then to move forward to get even higher response from students on that data point. So I'm going to turn it over, though. What I'd like you to hear from today from Shannon Solomon. She is our Career Services Manager, and so she's going to speak with you about how Career Services is partnering with the faculty and this program in our CTE areas. And then Bree Jones is our Administrative Assistant for the Completion Center. So I'm a little biased, but she does a great job. But she is also a student and was able to take a Quality Enhancement Plan course last semester. So she's going to share with you her perspective of the course from a student.
Thank y'all for having us tonight. I just wanted to touch briefly on some of the things that the career coaches have been doing over the past year as part of this program. One of the first things, well, let me back up and preface that these are things that we have always been doing, but we have enhanced them over this last year to really support the QEP and make sure that these students are learning these employability skills, and beyond just learning them, they're able to communicate with employers about them. So one thing that we have done is partnered with faculty, even more so in the past year. We reach out to them at the beginning of the semester, ask them how we can support their classes. We do classroom presentations and workshops with them. And this past year, we've been intentional about taking the employability skill that they're learning in the classroom and tying it into our presentations with them. We've also been working with students one-on-one, again, something that we've always been doing, but now we take the employability skills that they're learning in the classroom and teaching them, how can you communicate this in a resume? How can you communicate this skill in an interview? How can you let these employers know that you are learning these skills in the classroom? So it's that articulation piece. And then we also have enhanced some of our events. We do a lot of events with employers, and we've added pieces where they can apply these skills now, and they can practice before they're actually getting into the workforce. So they can practice their 30-second elevator pitch with employers, talk about their skills, and get that experience before they're actually going into the interviews and going in for a job. So they're learning the skills in the classroom, and then we're just kind of reinforcing them and getting them that practice before they go into the real world, if you want to call it. So I'm going to pass it over to Bree now. Thank you.
Hi, nice to meet you. My name is Bree Jones, and like Amy had stated before, I am the Completion Center Administrative Assistant, and I'm also fortunate enough to be a student here at NCTC as well. I am currently working towards a web development certificate. So last semester I was enrolled in the QEP course, Technical Customer Service. When I enrolled for this course, I first initially thought it was going to be simple, only because my current position is technical customer service, and all of my previous careers have been in customer service. So I kind of felt like I already had the basis for the course. However, I did learn a lot of valuable information, even though I did have that base already. And I learned a lot about different thought processes and ways to handle different situations that I tend to forget on my day-to-day, life, just because I use it all the time. The course is mostly focused on one employability skill. However, there are other skills incorporated in the assignments. So even though we're focusing, for example, on problem solving, it's also bringing in critical thinking and communication and things like that. When you go through the process of problem solving, it's a strategic process, so you have to utilize those other skills. And here's a quote that I grabbed from the course that I think states this really well. Rather than a series of sequential steps, troubleshooting or problem solving is an iterative process, a creative process in which a support agent tries an approach, and if one approach doesn't work, they try another. So we use these skills on a day-to-day basis. If something doesn't work, we work towards figuring out the solution using these employability skills without even realizing. And this also shows through the assignments that relate directly to real-life situations. So most of the assignments are relating towards an actual career that these students can work towards after college. And throughout the course, you have that support from Career Services on building a resume and building these the interview skills and employability skills, which is very beneficial to the students, I believe. And I feel like that's also very helpful because soft skills do have a grounding in common sense, but the course does a really well job on breaking down the skills and not being to where it's like, yeah, I already know this. It's giving you more information on the deeper concept of these employability skills and why it's important and why you should know these to be hireable in the future. And in elementary and from on, we're always asked what we want to be when we're older, but we're never really taught the base and the grounding work of how to be hireable and how to be employable in the future. And it's nice to dream about what you want to be in the future, but if you don't have that groundwork in the base, it's going to be very hard when you're trying to search and trying to be hired in the future. And I feel like after COVID, the transition from high school to college has been even more difficult for students just because they've been, taking school online and been trapped up in the house, and now we're transitioning back to being in person, and I feel like a lot of those groundworks and a lot of the skills are lost on the students because they didn't have to utilize that while they were at home. It's a lot different now when you're transitioning into real life situations because you have to have that groundwork or you won't be able to find a job in the future, and I feel like that's where a lot of students are finding it difficult to find a career path nowadays. So throughout the semester, you, even if you have a question or if you find an assignment confusing, the career coaches and career services are always there to help the students. There was constant outreach throughout the semester with messaging. If you ever needed to set up an appointment, they're always there and ready to assist you with any questions that you have. And like I stated before, resume assistance, interview prep, mock interviews, things like that. So you're working hand in hand with the career coaches throughout the course, and you never feel like you're left to just learn it on your own. And on the pamphlet, Amy and I actually interviewed with the Denton Chronicle on the back with the QR code if you would like to read on that. It has a lot of information on the course as well. And I just believe that this entire system is very beneficial for the transition from learning these employability skills and actually getting the groundwork for being hireable. And I'm very fortunate that I'm able to take that course, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Just as a restatement of what Amy stated, the Bellwether Award is a national award. So that is a competitive for all community colleges in the United States. And to have a program that not only our site visit said was nationally replicable, but also to see the Bellwether Association saying this is worthy in its infancy to be considered for the award is a huge compliment to the college and our work and the team's work. So great job to you ladies and everyone involved in this. This is exciting.
Thank you. All righty. Discussion and action items. Consideration of funding new residential housing on the Gainesville campus. How would you like?
Well, I'll start this, and Dr. Grimes, I gave you a doctorate. I hope you enjoyed that.
Order already.
Mr. Grimes had already mentioned this. You have before you some things that our architects can answer for you. The committee has looked at this. This began as a process, and Robbie can comment. Jack has knowledge. There's lots of experts in the room. But this began as a conversation somewhat out of the building subcommittee for the board our desire to continue to serve our students in residential capacities. And it was sort of a conversation that was led after we piloted and began the process of a dorm for our equine students. So if you notice, we did that sort of on our own. We were able to do that at a reduced price. The last time we bid, and architects are here, I think the last time we bid pre-COVID on a traditional dorm, we were at $8 to $10 million for about 100 beds, and that is what the going rate now is now 10 million because it's hard to find, and we just know there's a boundary there for us. We can't begin to make that happen without sizable increased dollars from some source. So we began to say, can we do this with the partnership of architects, with our maintenance staff, and subcontracting some of it? And so it led to what you have before you, which is not really even a recommendation this evening. It is a conversation to be had. I will say this. We have plans to bring soccer, for example, to North Central Texas College, both men's and women's. We can't do that without facility to house. We are finding currently that students are being placed in odd positions during semesters where they're becoming house insecure, or they're having other complications that they need temporary, or they need remainder of semester housing. Well, we are fortunate that we're able to sometimes manipulate that and make it happen, but there are other times where we're literally saying there's no room in the inn, so to speak. There's no place for that, and that's sad for students that are doing all the right things in classroom, and all of a sudden life has turned a corner and they're no longer housed, or they're food insecure, and that's where the dorms and our food service would be able to help that. And that's a relationship, honestly, with some funds from the foundation and emergency funds that undergird that work. I mean, it's a partnership. So that's where we are. You have before you, and Robbie, I'd rather you kind of go through what this dollar amount entails, or architects, whoever you see fit. But the $4.6 million, I think, has a phase to it. If you want to just talk about that, then
If I might, before you do that, let's go back just a second and talk about traditionally, annually, we turn away how many students who are seeking housing?
So we're just now coming back off COVID, which COVID numbers, I don't know if we'll ever go pre and post COVID. I hope that narrative changes someday for all entities because it's become weary. But pre-COVID, we would average 150 students that were just not able to be housed in some regard. We would, just say there's no place for you because we're obligated first and foremost because of NJCAA rules. We must house all scholarship athletes. Now that's not including walk-ons. Walk-ons would pay that dorm fee and would be, but we have to house those. Well, when you have athletic programs as successful and as large as we do, and not as large as most of our colleagues across the state, that pretty much takes up your dorm space. And that includes equine. That's not just, what we consider traditional NJCAA. We treat our equine programs the same as we do. So 150 or so.
Okay, and if we were to add soccer and whatever athletic teams that we can put together here, the anticipated need over the next 2 years would be approximately how many students?
Well, one of the things we're trying to do, for example, if you bring soccer, you're at least 40 students. If you do 2020, there's Title IX requirements for the female and the male side, so you're looking at 40. We've talked about, and I hate to even put this out in the internet and the interweb, so everybody, it's the cone of silence, not really. We've talked about basketball coming back to NCTC. Yeah, well, I told you, we've talked about it. Because there's a growing demand for that. If basketball comes back, there's a lot of work before we can do that. The gym isn't prepared for that, honestly, and the locker rooms aren't prepared for that. But we certainly can't meet that and have without additional dorm. We aren't bringing football. But there are, yeah, I know, those of us that have other colleges where we manage football, we're not bringing football. It is, and then we're left with adding a baccalaureate degree in nursing. If we move forward with a bachelor's degree in nursing in 24, and you happen to be that student that needed housing for that, where do you go? We have a growing need, in my opinion, of what I would call single-parent type housing needs. Well, we could make Hayes, that could be, you know, you could offset some of the folks in Hayes into a new dorm setting and make that available for people in professional programs there. There's more than just athletics to this. It's opening up to paying students that mom and dad say in Cook County, for example. I have a lot of parents that go, I want to send my kid there first to keep an eye in close distance, but I want them out of the house. I get that a lot. That's not really an option right now. We're at capacity, and so I think we could easily fill an additional dorm, and we have folks that could attest to that in the audience.
If we did a conservative estimate, instead of the 150 pre-COVID, and said post-COVID 100, which would be conservative, and an additional 60, we then need housing for at least 150 people, over and above what we have available today.
I would agree with that, but here's why I would agree with that number even more than just new students. We are also getting to the capacity of what Bonner can tolerate. Bonner is, what, 55 years old now?
Close to that, yes.
And if you went to Cook County College, you don't want to think about that because it's hard to probably believe that the dorm is that old. But we're now at a point where plumbing is a daily, weekly kind of issue because we're overtaxing what that dorm was originally built to handle. It's antiquated, older infrastructure. We've already moved from electric, you know, or vice versa. We moved to gas, didn't we? I think, Jack, for savings costs associated with that for heat and water heating. But if we had one person per room in there, it could handle it still. We're putting 2 or more and communal bathing. So we even need to be able to offset. We're at a point where housing is going to come to a conclusion at NCTC if we don't think down the road, because Bonner can only tolerate so much more. And then Hayes is now 20-something years old.
The point of, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the point of the conversation we just had was to point out this is an important, pressing issue for the school. And we're having a discussion tonight, only a discussion tonight, on how we might move forward. But I think it's critical that we have that discussion and start talking about what the plan is going to be sooner than later. And I would open it up please go forward. I'm sorry, I'll try not to interrupt you again because we'll talk about money now and go from there.
Okay, what you have there is the cost estimate from the architects, and that includes bidding the project out with a general contractor. As you know, our internal maintenance staff can do a lot of work. I think most of you have seen the equine dorms. That was all done internally with subcontractors. And Mr. Jack Cable, who is a licensed general contractor, as a general contractor. Now keep in mind, that facility at the equine is a facility that was built outside the city limits. So there were not as many city requirements on that particular building as there would be on a new dorm. But we feel like that we could possibly build at least this one dorm of 66 beds up to $4 million. Not that we would use all the $4 million, but we could get it done for an amount up to $4 million. We could probably even get the shell of a second dorm, but we wouldn't be able to finish it out with that amount of money.
So we're talking about turnkey. We're talking about furnishing it, IT. In other words, what's a turnkey cost to produce that single building?
Yes.
With everything in it?
Up to $4 million, yes.
Questions?
So the next step would be for us, if you believe we should pursue this as a board, the next step would be to instruct us to go forward with finance option. And there are really only 2. And Dr. Miller can attest to this. If I'm wrong, make sure stop me. But basically, we have 2. You have a GO. I mean, there's 3, but there's a GO where you go to the tax, the citizens and vote whether you would like to add to that. That's not been an option and typically isn't an option with housing, just to be honest. You normally use those for instructional space, et cetera. The second is a revenue bond. If you remember, we have paid off some of our revenue bonds over the last 2 years early in order to place those monies in other leasing kinds of things. And I guess honestly, the third would be to fund it somehow at a reserve, but we would be, you will find the administration not willing to make that recommendation to you as a board because I have my own concerns about seeing through the new funding formula from the state, and I don't want rainy day to go away for us and our reserves in case there's a blip. We're very comfortable where we are with our operational expense. I'm not foreseeing anything, but to take $4 and $5 million out of our reserves would be something we wouldn't recommend, but if we were ordered to do so for the board, we would of course oblige.
Also, for the members of the board who didn't have an opportunity to attend the building committee, the architects involved in this are here tonight. If you have any questions, you'd like to visit with them about what's it look like, what it's going to cost, that kind of thing, y'all be willing to come up and talk if we have questions? Anybody have any questions specific for the architects?
I think overall, the plan seems to be very efficient, and I think maintenance-wise, it seems to be very efficient. I do think we still have to answer some questions as far as what other costs are there.
Oh, absolutely.
For example, do we have plenty of services in the cafeteria for added students on campus full-time? Do we have just a myriad of, are there other security issues we need to think through? And what does that really look like? What is the, I know there's not really an ROI necessarily on student housing, but I think we really need to kind of see what's the overall true cost, not just the building cost.
Sure. I absolutely agree. And Dr. Miller?
And some of this is, I think, too, we've also discussed, Robbie's was asking for $4 million here. I think the other question that came up is that gets us 66 students if we decided, hey, we want to do something more with the shell. So I think there's a whole lot of things we need to discuss.
Yep.
As far as how, what does it look like? What other costs are we going to have as a college?
Yeah, and I think, go ahead.
No, I would also offer this for comparative. We can also provide the board with what, I mean, I hate to use this term, but where we're competing with other colleges. Grayson has just built a new, very impressive dorm. I think it's 4-story tall, 3 or 4, suite-based. We are competing with other colleges for like athletic programs. For example, Levelland College or South Plains College in Levelland, Texas, can house 700 students. For the nature fit of a rural-based campus, I would say that we probably have the least residential option of any of the 50 in the state. Cisco College can house 300. Ranger College can and Ranger is a very fiscally tight college. They can probably house about 350 to 400. So it is also a competitive piece to say, as we end Bonner's existence over the next few years, how do we draw people to a residential campus versus what we're doing in Denton County, for example, which is very much going to be commuter. But there are Denton County students, for example, we turn away sometimes a cosmetology student that'd like to live in the dorm because we don't have, but they live in Denton. They don't want to make the trip every day. They can pay the dorm fee because it's cheaper than living in rental property in Denton, but they just struggle to, but we don't have the space. So we can provide you a lot more detail. What I think we want tonight is this something the board even wants to entertain at all? And then if so, we can move forward with securing actual dollars and cents from our financial advisors to say, here are some options. The interest rates right now are going to be better if we go quickly rather than if we wait, because even if we had done this probably 3 years ago, we can't forget, the interest rates even for us with our triple ratings and our great, it's going to be a little higher. And so then that becomes a budgetary yearly consideration.
So would it be the pleasure of the board to say to you, we would like you to move forward considering options on financing, options on construction, background information, John, absolutely considering facilities and the strain on the facilities based on an increase in X number of housing units. So if that pleases the board, I would say yes, please move forward with all alacrity.
And that doesn't require an act of the board. You can just will move forward.
And the quantity of room.
Yes,
yeah,
we'll do it.
absolutely.
You bet.
What is the time frame to build?
Well, I would assume that this build would be an 18-month process, I would think, gentlemen. Is that correct? Probably fall of '24 if we started next week. I mean, it's very difficult. I mean, and we're in a building hurt.
I want us to be thoughtful
Yeah.
if we introduce programs
Yes,
to allow time to
yes.
recruit.
I agree.
And that is
Well-
one of the dilemmas we're in right now. We talked to Van, and he's on the,
We're kind of in limbo with soccer because if we don't, we may have to do less numbers or say, okay, we're going to keep it intramural for a period of time before, and that's where we're in limbo a little bit. But most projects are going to be an 18-month at least.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll move forward. Thank you,
Alrighty.
sir.
Consideration of a contractor for the Gainesville Campus Medal of Honor.
well, I got better news this time. I'm not gonna ask you for any money. Although I'm 0 for 2 now, so let's see how this one goes. We were awarded $5 million from the 87th State Legislative Session, which began this past January 2021. And we were awarded those funds, and we have received the funds for the Medal of Honor Museum. Our architects, in conjunction with the Medal of Honor Host City program and the NCTC, began working on a building design and drawings. And the final design was approved by both NCTC and the Medal of Honor. So we advertised for bids in the Gainesville and area newspapers, and we had it in for bid for two things. One, a base bid, and secondly, alternate bids for alternates 1 through 10, and the alternates consisted of some enhancements to the building that we'd like to do. But anyway, we got the sealed bids back on November the 8th, and as you can see, the first bid there is $5,517,000 with construction days of 440 days. The second bid came in at $6,777,000 with 510 construction days. And then a bid from Plyler Construction was $5,170,000 with construction days of 427 days. The base bid is actually $170,000 over what the state provided for us, but as it's already been mentioned, Medal of Honor Host City program and the City of Gainesville is going to cover the excess of the $170,000, of which $100,000 of it we received tonight. Also, in addition to that, there are some other design things that we'd like to do as far as the alternates go, so we're going to have to depend on some private donations or other funding sources if that comes through. So what we'd like to do is recommend Plyler Construction as the general contractor for the Medal of Honor Museum. Plyler has been one of our contractors in the past. They were our contractor for the Health Science Center and the Industrial Training Center. And we'd like for the board to approve Plyler Construction for the construction of the Medal of Honor Museum. And Plyler is here. David Plyler is here. If you have any questions for him, our architects are here.
Medal of Honor.
As it's already been mentioned, our Medal of Honor partners are here as well. So, any questions?
Questions from the board? That being the case, I would entertain a motion to accept the bid from Plyler Construction. Have a motion, second? Second. Super. All in favor of this, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Well.
I'll just, one statement, Mr. Hand. I think that it is going to be a remarkable opportunity for not only the City of Gainesville and the Medal of Honor Host City organization itself, but I am excited about the educational capability of this facility for not only our students here, but also the 100,000 young people that come through our campuses every 2 or 3 years through UIL and through other events. It's going to be a hub for this community, and we're thrilled by that, and we're looking forward to that as well.
Super. Well, I'm sorry to say we do not have anything for the executive session, so I need to entertain a movement for adjournment. We have a second.